We've got a few different examples of pieces of travel lighting here, candlesticks mostly. So let's take a look at them. Well, first of all, we've got a pair of cast brass early 19th century travelling candlesticks, or also known as military candlesticks, and widely known in the antiques trade as Brighton Bun candlesticks, because the two sconces unscrew from their dish bases, and then the two dishes screw together and they form a compact bun-like shape for ease of travel, for ease of packing. This is quite a nice pair. You can see that it's got some quite simple ring-turned spun decoration to the cast dishes. They're a good size and a good shape, and the smaller candle sconce pushes us towards an early 19th century date. So that's quite a nice pair there. Now, it's not often that we get Brighton Bun travelling candlesticks with a maker's name to them. Hardly ever, in fact, unless they're silver, and you can look up the silver marks. But this is a pair of cast brass ones by William Tonks and Sons of Birmingham. And hopefully you can see here there's the mark W, T and S with Tonks's logo of the star. And we've had one or two pairs before, but they're not easy to find. These are cast brass. They're going to be mid to late 19th century. And you can see the size of the dishes are much smaller than the other pair. They work in exactly the same way. And the cast candle holder or sconce screws there, and you've got a very useful little travel candlestick. So those two pairs are both cast brass. Now this pair, which is later, it's going to be late 19th century, is made of pressed brass, and the candle holder sconces are pressed and cast brass. So perhaps if we do a sound test, that's pressed brass, quite a nice thick gauge of pressed brass. That's cast brass. And this pair are nicely made. You can see the dishes have got a turned over lip. The sconces are quite nice quality. And they were a cheaper way of making these candlesticks. Pressing the brass dishes was far more cost effective, so they could be sold cheaper, they could be turned out quicker. Then our last pair of Brighton Buns that we're going to show you are this pair, and they're completely pressed. And again, you can see the dishes are that bit smaller than the other pair, and the candle holders sconces are pressed as well. So if you look at the two of them comparing each other, the pressed and the cast, and you can see the difference in quality and gauge of metal. And this pair are going to be around about 1900 in date. Now that takes us on to this brass candlestick, which is a super piece of travel lighting and really quite unusual. We've had one pair of candlesticks a number of years ago that are the only things that we can compare with this. They work in a similar way to Brighton Buns in that the candle holder unscrews from the base, but it doesn't pack into the base. So you would pack these separately, but you can see that dismantled, it doesn't take up much space at all. And the other pair that we had, which were comparable, had a much wider base. They were probably about 2.5 inches, 3 inches. And those candlesticks were made of bronze, and the bases were square. And they very much had a feel that they might have been used to hold down a map whilst also giving light. Now, this is a very unusual and interesting bit of travel lighting. It's not constructional, purely constructional, having it threaded. It was made purposely to dismantle. Whether it was one of a set of these candlesticks or it's a single, we'll never know. But that's a super piece of travel lighting. Cast brass, early 19th century. And on to our final piece that we're going to look at, and that's this. Rosewood and brass, and it's a travel lantern. So how does it work? Well, we've got a little brass swing hook to the top here, and if we release that, we can then open the lantern. And the top becomes its handle for carrying it. It's got a spike to the bottom of the base with a hole in, and you would fix your candle onto that spike. But when you're closing it and you want it to remain packed down for travel, the spike passes through the lid and the swing hook then passes through the hole to the spike. Now, we've had one other paper travel lantern before. As you can imagine, they're pretty rare by their nature. Paper and fire, not a great combination. But they are known. The Army, National Army Museum in London have got one which is purely made out of paper and card, as opposed to rosewood, which this one is, with paper. And that belonged to Captain Drake, and he used it in the Napoleonic Wars. And of course, Florence Nightingale, the Lady of the Lamp, she had a Turkish paper lantern that she used in the Crimean War. This one is probably from Batavia, which is now Jakarta, Indonesia, and it's early to mid 18th century. And we arrive at its place of manufacture from the type of metalwork that's used, that's been cut, the hinge here, the little flowered shaped decoration, but also to the bottom there, holding in the pin. But also we've seen other examples which have the same coloured lines to the paper. So quite a rare piece of travel lighting, really. Probably from Batavia, modern day Jakarta, early to mid 18th century. So there you go, a selection of different items of travel lighting. They're all on our website, and you can look at the photographs and look further in depth to them, campaignfurniture.com. And also, if you go into the archive, there's a section just on lighting, and you'll see all sorts of different items of travel lighting.